Wired Axcess.
We'll do it live.
Wired Axcess.
Do it live.
Wired Axcess.
We'll do it live.
Wired Axcess.
Welcome to Wired Axcess Podcast. I'm your host, DJ K-Dub Omaha, where we are, of course, are a Hurrdat sports production. We can't do what we do without them. Make sure to like, share, follow, do all those great things. Today, I have the Major League Soccer in the area, Union Omaha head coach, who just took over this year, Coach Vinnie is what I know, but it's actually Vincenzo Candela.
Yes, it is.
Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you for having me.
You, of course, joined Union Omaha this last year. You guys had the rocky start to a great finish, I would say, where you guys put yourself in an opportunity that some might have said, I don't know if they're going to make it back. You guys proved that wrong, which is amazing. But I think your story to get to where you are today is what I really want to hit on. That way the fans know what coach they have, what history they have, because I think sometimes that gets lost in the sauce. More like, okay, what knowledge does he have? What things can he bring to the team? What things does he know? But it's your connections also, because you're traveling distance. And I say this because I lived in Netherlands for 4 years, and I know that you did some time in Europe with Belgium and all that. So that hits a little close to me. I was a young kid. I was an Air Force brat.
Yeah.
But I love the history over there because soccer is king. And here in Omaha, hopefully you have seen in this last year, Omaha is doing a lot of great things to hopefully make it more and more king in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, thank you for having me. And so I actually was brought on in 2024 as an assistant coach. And the first thing, like you touched on previous experiences, I said, I wanted to get to know the community, even as an assistant coach. And one thing that exactly like you mentioned, I'm all about bringing more opportunities to the community. And even as a head coach now, when that change happened as an interim in July, I was still focused kind of on the community and my players. And that's my biggest role. And I know we'll touch on it, but yeah, I've lived in a lot of different places, and I'm very proud now to call Omaha home. And all that I want is for my players to be happy here and to provide opportunities for the community. And my goal, even as a coach and manager, as they say in a couple countries, is making sure that the community feels that they're represented by Union Omaha. And I think that's a massive part of our growth.
Well, of course, prior to your arrival, you know that they got their second star in the USL League One. They've won 2 championships, 2021, 2024. And, of course, as you see, I'm wearing a Beef jersey. So the reason I wore this is because I feel there's so much connection with sports here in Omaha that some people don't know. Like the fact that community is so important, the fact that the players are a part of the community, they go out. Businesses are a part of the organization to make sure these players are supported. And then the fact that they have championships.
Exactly.
Who doesn't want championship
Exactly.
soccer, championship football, championship volleyball? That is what is so awesome in Omaha, and you're now a part of the history of it. You said about your traveling. When you look at the weather, is there anywhere that you've been that's kind of related so far to what you've experienced here?
I've actually been in places that are way worse.
Okay.
So this even feels at 30 degrees outside. It feels like a nice summer day. And so actually my last playing experience in 2023 was about 75 miles from the Arctic Circle in northern Sweden.
No way.
And it's so funny because I got there in June and there was 21 hours of daylight. When I left the first week of December, there was 5 hours of daylight. And so kind of by the middle of September, there was already 6 feet of snow on the ground. So
yeah, you haven't seen that here in a long time.
Yeah.
When you think of that experience, right, mentally, physically, how does that change you and help you adapt to what life could be with the whole? I think people don't understand sometimes what those countries have to deal with, like Alaska, and the fact of no nighttime or barely any daytime. How did you adjust yourself when you ended up moving up to Sweden to that atmosphere?
Yeah, I think your routine changes a little bit because, of course, the training times change, and so, everything revolves around your profession. And so there was definitely some adjustment periods, and, the sun is beautiful. It gets us going, right?
Yes.
And so when you miss it during those, fall and winter months, you just start to feel a little bit different. And so I think that's one thing that I even take myself into kind of preparing my team for things, because I know the winter could be a challenging time to prepare a team for a season that's coming up. And so I take kind of everything that maybe affected me when I was playing in that environment, and I try to implement it and making sure that our guys aren't negatively affected it during the preparation period of the season.
Well, I think what people also don't know is you guys play from March until it could go October, November. You're playing just as long as the baseball.
Yep.
You're playing in a lot of the similar conditions. I mean, I got a DJ when it was a cross rainstorm, and your grounds crew, holy cow, did they do everything they could, because they knew how important that half point was, that point would be. And those are the things that, you know, just makes the love of a game just go to a whole nother level. Of course, you've been to a couple destinations. Talk about your growing up with soccer. Where'd you grow up? I believe it was Colombia.
Colombia, yep.
How is soccer life there, and that's kind of where you fell in love with it? How did you start that love for soccer?
Yeah, so I have a very unique path, and that's the beautiful thing about any one of our professions, be it in sports or whatever sector you're in, is that there's so many different paths, I feel like, nowadays to get to where you want to get to. And so for me, I was born in Colombia to Colombian mother, Italian father. So right away, you have a very passionate mix there.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and anything. So when I was 4 years old, we moved to South Florida. And so when I was 4 to 17, I lived in South Florida. And no one in my family actually ever played sports, played soccer. I was just a kid that loved competing, loved running around. And my parents just needed me to go waste some energy somehow, and they said, "Listen, this sport's pretty good." So they
now,
threw
did
me
they
at it.
play any sports, not soccer or anything growing up?
My dad actually did motocross in Italy.
Oh man,
and so he was always trying to push me to race. And actually came to an age later on where I had to pick between racing or soccer, and I think I picked the right one.
I'm pretty sure you could get down. I mean, I know with racing, body style matters.
Yep.
Height, weight, and ability.
Yeah.
The way you got to go left, right, or if it's on the dirt, then it's the jumps and being able to take those. But your dad also probably expressed to you, just as in sports with soccer, the body's going to take a toll. What body, toll do you want to take?
Exactly. No, and he kind of guided me in that. And the biggest thing for me, I love people, I love friends, I love relationships, and so I was always pushed towards going towards a team sport, because I think even at that young age, it teaches so many the importance of certain morals and characters that really can help you develop as a young adult. And I realize that now, and I didn't realize it in the moment, but I was always pushed towards, friends, relationships. And so kind of I used that time in South Florida to build that. And, that's what kind of really got me to fall in love with the sport that turned into a profession.
Well, when you think of that time of learning the sport, how competitive did you go? And what was the level of play? Because I say this because everybody just expects everybody to play for the top AAU team, always be at the highest competition as soon as they get that chance. But some people just play it and gain it as they grow, and maybe by high school or closer to college time, you're like, now it's time to turn it up.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? Every individual is different. And so I was actually a late bloomer, and to the point you made, I actually didn't play for the top team at my youth club until I was 13. And so even in kind of those young ages where, if he's going to become someone good as a professional, he probably should be at the top team. And myself and a couple of my friends that later went to play professionally, we weren't. And it all comes down to how bad do you want something, right? How hard are you going to work for it? Because there's a lot of athletes that have the talent, but they might not have the professional mindset or the willingness to work just a little bit harder. So for myself, I touched on my dad. He was the one that pushed me from a very young age to really try to perfect my craft at a young age, and it helped me realize what hard work is. My parents were after the American dream, and I saw how hard they worked for their things, and it stuck with me from a very young age, and that's kind of the work ethic I have to this day.
Well, I like that you brought that up, because a lot of people think, I don't know how soccer rates players, but of course, if we're related to football, what star are you? 3-star, 4-star, 5-star?
Exactly.
The 3 stars sometimes outperform the 5 stars because of exactly what you said. Your passion, your drive, and destination is something that you're going for harder because you have to. You know if you don't, there's nothing on that other side.
Yep.
When you think of yourself going and looking through the high school ranks and trying to see where you want to go, what did you experience during that time that really pushed you, and how did you find where in your next step of your adventure?
Yeah, for sure. I talked about kind of that work ethic, and that work ethic made me realize pretty early on what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so when high school came around, I started to become a better soccer player, and opportunities started to arise in South Florida, and I started to play against players that were much older than me, which helped my development. Then I started to realize, oh, you know what, maybe this could become something that I do for the rest of my life. And I actually decided at a young age when I turned 16 that I was going to head over to Europe to try to become a professional in Europe, because at that time in South Florida, there weren't a lot of opportunities to go pro or to get into a good Division I school through a scholarship. So kind of I realized that during high school, which is a bit unique. And so I pushed myself very hard to make sure I have a good education, but at the same time try to perfect my craft from a very young age.
What do you remember about that talk with your parents of having such a dream or a goal that's beyond something they can control, right? You know, with around here nowadays, you need more training, we'll find you the trainers. You need a program, we'll try to get you in the program. Now, obviously, they got to choose you. But to move to a whole other country, and obviously they took the American dream, as you said, that had to be a part of that conversation with, this is what you want, son, we're gonna find a way for that to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think, as a teenager, you start to have a little bit more, maybe we can use the word rights towards what you want to do with the rest of your life. So I kind of outlined a plan to them as to what I wanted to try to do with the rest of my life. And I showed that guidance, and I showed, I guess, my maturity there. What I tell young kids now, it doesn't matter the sport, but, show your coaches, show your parents that you are going to work hard towards something, that this is what you want, and kind of be the driving force for yourself, because there are players that are developing very young, be it basketball, football, soccer, that are starting to get these opportunities at much younger ages, because athletically they're developing younger. So be that driving force and showcase yourself to your parents, to your coaches, that you can get somewhere important. So to me, that's what I showcase them, and that's why they kind of gave me the freedom and trusted me to give me a little bit more responsibility to go out on my own to Europe.
Where'd you come up with the game plan? How did you find that? Obviously, internet is cooking when you're going, but it's nowhere where it is today, where the knowledge is power. How did you start with that? Yeah,
it's funny because I just started, like you said, I just started learning how to use a computer at that age. I'm a 94, so I know there's some youngins out there that they were born with computers and laptops.
They have no idea what
they have
it
no
is.
idea. So I mean, I remember getting on the computer at home and having to listen to the dial-up and all that fun stuff. AOL, baby.
You got mail.
Exactly. So it's funny. Yeah, I would get on there and I would look for teams in Europe that had these tryouts, and I would email them, and I would just be hoping for responses. And so that's the form of communication. I would look for emails, contact these people directly, and that's how I started to get some feedback as to kind of what the right path could be for me to showcase myself.
Film, stuff like that. How was that communication? Because it's not like today
No.
where I could put it up quickly. That dial-up is not taking that 5-minute highlight reel and sending it over to Europe. How was that for you?
It was tough to even get them to kind of engage in a conversation to try to get an opportunity. And so the opportunity that I got, they basically said, we'll give you 4 or 5 days to be able to see you in person, because I didn't know how I could send a video to Europe and anything like that. So they said, look, if you want to take the risk and come over here, we'll give you a couple days to see how you are. And that's a risk that I was willing to take, and I wish it was as easy as it is now.
Who was the first person that gave you that opportunity?
So it was a small soccer school that is tied to a first division team in Spain, and they gave me an opportunity to kind of get my feet wet and see the environment in Europe. And from there, kind of everything started to explode for me, where I got accustomed to the European soccer culture. And once you're in Europe, opportunities just start to multiply.
You talk about going to Spain, and you go to Spain. How's your Spanish at this time? Did Mom keep that where it needs to be? Because, of course, there is still that difference between Colombian Spanish and Spain Spanish, American Spanish. How are you able to kind of combine all that together so you felt like you're going over there with some confidence and not with just going, all right, I'm going to go willy-nilly and see what happens?
Yeah, it's funny. So my first language was always Spanish, and we spoke it at home, and then we also spoke some Italian as well. And English I learned through the school system, so I love the public school system in South Florida. Represent, give them a shout out.
That's right.
But they speak a different dialect over there, and some of the words they were saying, I had a blank face and I had no idea what to do. So it was definitely an eye-opener as a 16, 17-year-old. But, just getting thrown into that world by yourself, it humbles you very quick. And you learn a lot about yourself.
What was that plane ride for you going? How long was it? Was it 12 hours?
It was about 12 hours, yeah.
What's going through your mind? And are you alone? Did someone go with you? How did that go?
Yeah, so I was alone, and I call her my aunt, but she was a family friend of my mom's that was living in that city at the time.
Doesn't have to be blood.
Exactly.
I've learned that a long time.
Exactly. And so she let me stay at her place for a couple months to see these opportunities if it were arise to be that duration. And so I flew by myself, and they picked me up from the airport, and I stayed with them, and they were kind of like my second family in Europe.
You get out there to Europe, and you start. What do you remember about the first time you go to this organization that's going to offer you a chance to show who you are? And you have to have some thought of your mind that you're either going all in and I'm going to do this, or you're going, what happens if I don't get it? What's going through that mind?
Yeah, a lot. And honestly, the first thing that always comes to mind that I remember is that I could not stop sweating. I was sweating like crazy. I was nervous. But then there's that sense of I always saw the sport as a release. And so the moment I got on the field, I felt so comfortable, even more comfortable than I did, with the outside environment. And that's kind of, I just enjoyed it. I think even to this day, how I coach, I just find joy and positivity such a driving force in sports. And that's something that I always tried to make sure my teams have. And so that was kind of the release for me, that it was very stressful, very nerve-wracking off the field in the locker room. But once I got on the field, I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing here.
Now, you're staying over there. You're starting through the first days. When do you know that you have the opportunity? Obviously, you're doing, he said, a couple practices, see what you do, see who you are. How did that go for you?
Yeah, so, I mean, it was wonderful, and it opened up my eyes to how, like I touched on, no one in my family ever played soccer or tried to get to the professional rank. So I started to realize that at these schools, a lot of scouts from other teams come watch your trainings, not even your games, just straight up your trainings as well.
You mean practice is important?
Practice. I know there's a couple interviews out there that say practice a lot. Shout out right. AI, there we go.
That's right.
Through a couple practices, a couple of these teams started to invite me to trials and opportunities and tryouts with specific teams across Spain and Europe. And then from there, that's when I started to realize, okay, you know what, maybe I can make something of this.
Do you get an agent when you get over there? Do you get someone? You got to have someone that can guide you in the right way, because obviously time is money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And your time is very valuable. Their time is very valuable. Who's someone that helped you kind of understand that part of the game?
Yeah, once all of this started to happen, the people at that club that first gave me the opportunity, they started to guide me. My family started to learn about the process. And I wish maybe I knew someone like an agent at the time that could help guide me at that young ages, but unfortunately I didn't have that, and maybe things could have gone differently. But then, funny enough, an agent is the one who actually took me out of Spain for my first real opportunity that ended up in Portugal. And that's kind of how it started. Agents now they can be very, very helpful if you find the right one and you can trust them. And so that's kind of what continued my opportunities. Like you said, you have to find the right time, and it's very valuable.
Portugal, you go a whole different direction. What do you remember about that move, and how do you, like, what's your contact? Because this is before FaceTime.
Yep.
How are you still staying connected to your in-house aunt and then your parents? How's that conversation still going, and making sure that I'm thinking as a father of 4, college was hard.
Yeah.
And that was only 45 minutes. We could go down and see her. We went to a bunch of Husker games. We're blessed. I couldn't imagine hours.
It was tough because you had the time change. Like you said, that was, middle of the 2000s. So it's expensive to make,
collect calls
from one continent to another. So
you didn't have to do that. Hey, daddy is a boy. You have a collect call from who?
No,
hey, daddy is a boy.
Exactly. So we started. What was it? There was different, AIM and stuff like that, where you would, message family, try to get on the phone and stuff like that. That was pretty much a lot of the communication, and I think WhatsApp was coming up at that time as well, so you could make calls that way, at least. So that was pretty much the communication I had. Maybe it was a couple times a week to check in, see how everything was going. At the same time, my parents were working as well, so we had to find the right time. But they were always checking in. Yeah.
Over there, at least in Europe, you guys are from Florida. You're probably
it's like 6
hours ahead.
Yeah.
So that's obviously crazy. What else are you doing with your time during this time of development? How are you able to find stuff when you don't know that area? What's getting you familiarity in that area?
Yeah, so one thing that I did, on top of that, I was finishing high school online. So during the mornings or afternoons, depending on the training time, I would be finishing high school online. And then one thing that I took with me is that wherever I stopped, I would try to learn the language. And so that helped me kind of understand culturally how the country was, how that city was. And so when I was in Portugal, for example, I said, you know what, I'm going to dive into Portuguese and start to read it. It was Rosetta Stone, so got some Rosetta Stone. Thank you, Rosetta. Shout out as well, man. I need to get some sponsorships or something. But yeah, then I would immerse myself in the language and the culture, and that's how I would kind of start to learn from some things from the country where I was at.
What was like an average week schedule if you look back to those early days that changed as you continue to grow? What was the weeks looking like?
Yeah, so the weeks most of the time, during those youth phases until I joined I had a professional contract. I would train in the morning by myself for an hour and a half, most of the time on the field. I always found that to be very valuable for a soccer player. And then I would come back home. I would do school for 3 or 4 hours, then, have lunch, all that fun stuff, reset. And then, Europe is a little bit different to the U.S., so I would, because I didn't have any transportation, so I would take the public transportation to training, which would take about an hour and a half, then train, then come back home, then dinner, and then, depending what was maybe going on, just reset, do something else for my body, and then just repeat. And so
when you talk about this eating, what was some things that you had to maybe make some adjustments, maybe based off of the money that your family was having over there? What was some things that, because I know over here I've coached at Omaha South, and the powerlifting coach says, I went from saying you got to eat all this chicken to, hey, no, you need to eat all these calories. It could be 10 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Yep. I don't care. You have to make the adjustment to the person and their budget, and try not to make it where it's not achievable for them to get in their budget.
Yeah, for sure. And soccer's tough in that aspect of it, because I think if you look at basketball or football, certain positions, you want them to gain a certain amount of muscle, a certain amount of weight. It helps them. In soccer, you're trying to be as lean as possible most of the time. So you have to be very specific about the quantity of calories you intake, but then at the same time, you can't eat too little, because then come training time, it's a very demanding sport. You just won't have any energy, and then that's when you start to get these injuries. So I learned that, even no matter how much a meal could cost, you would have to try to find the best amount of food and the right quantity of it. and you have to replenish your body, and that's so important also on the developmental side from a young age to even to the professional game.
So when you look at yourself at that young age, how are you gaining this knowledge from other players, trainers? What's some people that are helping you more understand the game beyond just kicking a ball? Because in order to be that pro, you have to have that go-to people that will help get your body right,
sure.
get your mental right, and get your physical right in order for you to perform. Yeah,
for sure. And, a lot of the professional soccer teams here are starting to take that into account, what you touched on. And so for the teams in Europe, they had the coaches which would focus on the field stuff. And then, they had sports psychologists, they had nutritionists, dietitians that would help guide you a little bit as to what you should be doing. And then you also talk with your teammates as well as to what they do, what helps them, what makes them feel maybe a little bit sluggish. And sometimes from a young age, you almost do trial runs sometimes with certain foods, and you go, ooh, I like this, I don't like this made me feel good, this didn't. So you mix all of that in, and you speak with the professionals that know a lot about food, and you start to include that into your routine.
You talked about culture. When you look at the different places that you traveled through this right now, obviously we went to Spain and Portugal. What's some of the things that people from the outside, from America, might not understand about those cultures, whether it is sometimes the living situations, sometimes the availability of things? What was it like for you?
It's so different. And I remember the first question I was ever asked when I went to Europe, just because, it's a different time and they're so curious about life in America. They asked me, like, hey, do the roads over there have gold? Because they just have this, this vision of America of just being a great country and so powerful, which it is, and it's awesome. But I think the biggest thing to realize is that, America is always seen as having the best athletes in the world, and I think, they do because of all the resources this country has available. But there's some very great athletes that I think mentally may be just as strong or stronger than American athletes, and that's something I realize very well. They're very driven to succeed, and you think about a sport like soccer, it is engraved into the country's culture, and they are so passionate. For example, I know people from Nebraska are so proud to be from Nebraska and represent their state. That's how all of these countries feel, and all of these teams and clubs feel, that they will defend them till the death.
Yes.
And it's massive. Yeah.
You get that first opportunity in Portugal. What was that phone call for you like when they wanted to offer this? And what do you remember that, you wish you knew then that you know now in that whole conversation? Yeah, I mean, it was I remember it was just so much joy for myself and for my family. Because we thought it was a step to kind of change my life and their life. And so it was just pure joy and kind of understanding that it was the beginning of something. And, I think one thing that I wish I knew now is just I wish I knew the business side of the sport as well. And so there was a lot of mistakes that were made, the wrong decisions that we made, just because we didn't know the business side of it. Like I said, no one ever kind of explored into soccer or the sports side. And so there was times that we ended up getting taken advantage of just because we didn't know. Yes. So, like I said, guidance is massive. You, of course, go to Portugal. What was it like stepping on that field the first time knowing that you've reached one stepping stone of where you want to be? Yeah, it was very humbling, and then at the same time, like I touched on, I still viewed it as an opportunity to grow and to try to get to where I wanted to get. So I was just very, very grateful to have the opportunity to do that. And at the same time, I didn't want to let that opportunity go to waste. So more than anything, I was just hungry to prove myself. Everyone's always very hesitant coming from a country like the U.S. where soccer really isn't engraved in our culture. They really look down at you. And so for me, it was just about proving myself and proving that there are good athletes where we come from in this sport. Well, and then, of course, like you said, you got the Colombian background and the Italian. How does that represent yourself when you are going to these different countries? Is it something that, not that they're going to judge you by who you are, but sometimes those are things that they look at. You are from America, but you still have the blood for sure from those countries. How was that like for you? No, it's
I would say, in a vague way, it's very cool to have those connections to all of these countries because, it helps me connect with a lot of different cultures at the same time, right? And, it's something that I'm proud of. And, I always carry where I'm from on my shoulder. Like, Colombians are joyous, positive people. That's something that I love, and I'm going to carry with me. And Italians are passionate, and they care a lot. I have that as well, and I try to channel those emotions towards, my work.
It's electric, man. I mean, I feel it right here. That's why this thing's going. I mean, we're
I
probably
love it.
already 30 minutes. We are 30 minutes in,
Nice.
and it feels like 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I love it. And so, yeah, I channel all of kind of myself and my backgrounds into who I am today, and that's what kind of always keeps me going.
You go from Portugal. What's the next step? And
Yes.
and in fact, if for fans out there, how does the Portugal level compare to, let's just say, Union Omaha? Where would you compare it to?
Yeah, so in Portugal, it was my last youth year, so it was U19.
Okay.
And so if you were to, say, compare it to, like, a youth team here in Nebraska, I would say the level is very, very high over there.
Okay.
And so that club in specific, they'd only just get the players from their best city, but they grab them from the country as well.
Okay.
So the level is very high. It's borderline almost professional, even at a youth level.
Okay.
And so, but then once you get into the professional level, I would say, depending on the division, it's very similar to our group of guys here at Union Omaha.
What's next after Portugal? For
Yeah,
you?
so then I made the jump from the youth game in Portugal to the professional game, and spent a year and a half in Germany and then a year and a half in Belgium.
What did you learn about from Germany and Belgium that you thought you knew something, but it was reality? I was, of course, an Air Force brat in the Netherlands, so I lived in Schusterberg.
Nice.
I was able to travel across Germany and Belgium because my brother had ADHD before it was something. So we were traveling from base to base. So we were there when the Berlin Wall fell.
Wow.
We have a piece of it. I remember it, but I was still young. What was it like for you living over there?
I realized specifically Germans, how serious they are and how driven they are. And they're direct. They're very direct. And so I think when I was over there, I had just turned 18, and I'm into a locker room all of a sudden with 35, 36-year-olds that, this profession for me, I'm starting it out. It's their livelihood, and they have families to take care of. And so the tension just rises. And so that's one of the biggest things that I started to realize is, okay, there is a little bit more pressure now in succeeding and performing. And so everything starts to become a little bit more real.
Do you feel like the team and the name of being a team when you're going through this process is as deep as it is over here because there is so many options? Or do you feel like some of the players are more just looking for that next opportunity? So maybe they don't get to know you. Maybe they'll play with you. Don't get me wrong. As a teammate, but doesn't mean they want a relationship.
Exactly. And that's a great point. And that's basically, I've realized over the couple of years, that's how you can divide a successful organization versus one that's probably set up to fail. If a successful organization is probably going to bring the right people in that want to be a part of a team, that understand this team sport is defined by team success, not individual success. If these organizations start to bring in individuals that are selfish and care about those individual accolades, they're probably going to be set up to fail.
When you look at the age difference, how are you starting to separate and understand, just as you played up growing up, this is no different no matter if they got 10 years on you, 12 years on you?
Yeah, it's, those first couple training sessions in the beginning of the season, you start to realize, and it gives you confidence that, okay, it doesn't matter the age, I can hang with them. And so, you have to believe in yourself. The mental side of any sport is so important. And you have to trust in your training. You have to be confident in your abilities. And, you almost have to be overconfident at times to be able to do things that you may think may be challenging for you or you don't think you can do. You have to be very strong mentally to make sure that you are going to challenge for, starting positions or minutes, especially guys that may have already been established in that sector.
When you think of these stops so far up to Belgium, what do you think is your mental thing that you had to overcome, and How did you overcome it in due time?
I think the biggest thing was, it was a little bit of loneliness. I was over there by myself, and because of the different languages, I was studying them, but I wasn't perfect at it, and so I was also living by myself at the time. So you kind of have this feeling of sometimes I'm alone a lot of parts of the day if I'm not with the team. And so I think that was the most challenging part for myself, and sometimes players that come over from other countries. It's hard to build certain relationships as you're kind of making this journey. And so that was the most challenging aspect for me. And I kind of started to realize that later on in life, that being by myself for so long, it did teach me a lot about myself, but I might have had a more enjoyable time or succeeded more if, I had a group with me there on the ground.
Was there any teammates that you remember through your time that might have been on a similar journey where they're alone and they were able to maybe be someone you talked to, or who helped you get out of that funk?
Yeah, for sure. It was teammates that, like you said, that were going through similar things that maybe came from Asia or Africa or the Middle East, where we would start to bond because of, similar things that we were going through, similar life experiences. And so, we would go out to eat. We would spend time together in the weight room. And so we started to do things outside of football that made then our football more enjoyable.
You look at those facilities over there. How do they compare to what you see nowadays with facilities?
Man,
obviously, I know it's been 10 years, but it's still pretty recent.
Yeah.
Are they up to date over in the Europe and all that, or are they far behind?
I think they're starting to catch up. They're starting to realize that Europe, it's getting older as a continent. And so, things here in the U.S. are much more modern because everything's built a little bit, more recent. So I think, like I touched on before, the resources available here in the U.S. helps a lot of athletes set up to be successful for whatever they want to do in whatever sport. I think in Europe they're starting to rejuvenate those facilities.
As you're going through this part to where you're at Belgium, who's some players that you're looking up to, and did you have any starstruck moments through the process that you're like, I can't believe I'm on this same field as blank? Yeah,
there was a couple, and so I don't know if it's a well-known name, but so the person that drove me to soccer was this Italian soccer player named Francesco Totti, and he played for the team that I love and always support, is a team in Rome, and as I was coming up, that was always my dreams. Can I play for them? Can I play with him? And I got an opportunity to trial for them once, and funny enough, we ended up being just a couple feet away, and we were at the facility having breakfast together, and he just sat next to me, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
How did that conversation go? Because, I tell people all the time, like, those are the blessings that I've had. Like, I got my wife to meet Hulk Hogan. Why? Because I'm a DJ.
Yeah.
And I DJ'd his event before he passed.
That's awesome.
And I know some people politically for the Hulk Hogan thing, do what you do. This is just the icon of wrestling,
exactly.
Who he was. But I gave my wife a moment that had the steps not happened the way it did, that could never, ever happen. Where she had a one-on-one, got to tell him why he was important to her, because that was her connection to her father.
Yep.
Those are those moments
exactly.
that you can't remake. You're sitting down with this guy. What's that going on through your mind? And how surreal is it for you to go, maybe I'm not playing for him, but I'm still getting to... Did you get some knowledge from him? Did you have that courage to ask those questions?
No,
or did you just say, we're eating, just look down?
Yeah. I was a bit, I wouldn't say starstruck, but I was nervous as well. And so, funny enough, the first thing he said to me is, he said that I look like someone on the team. And so he joked, and we started laughing. And I think I said one other thing, and that was it. But I wish I kind of had the courage or just opened up the conversation a little bit more. But we were kind of in two different places. He was focused on something else, and I was just kind of enjoying breakfast at the time. But it was still a moment that it was very surreal for me, coming from the U.S. and then in a 2-year time, or at that time it was probably 1.5 years, 2-year time, to be able to be next to one of my idols.
Did it tell you that the steps that you've been taking is the right, even though there's some things that, as you said, where you felt like you were taken advantage of and stuff like that. Those things are going to happen because of knowledge, but as you're gaining it, you got to feel you're in the right way, right mind.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of gives you confidence in the path that you've taken, and it kind of shows you that, with work, these opportunities will arise.
You, of course, do Belgium. What's some things that you've learned up to this point for strengths for you, and what's some things that maybe people have pointed out that you've got to push yourself harder in order to get to where you want to be?
Yeah, and it's something that actually pushed me towards coaching because, as you see, I'm 5'7.5" on a good day, 5'8".
5'8" if you want him to be
5'8.5". We'll push it. We can round up and say
That's
6 foot.
right.
We can
6
round up
foot.
6 foot.
Hey, there was a football player that just got quoted for that. So I mean, he is 5'8". Like I think they put him at 5'8" and 9/7 or whatever.
I love it.
And so,
I
but
love
he
it.
puts himself at 6 foot. So
So-
you're not the first or last.
Exactly. I love it. So,
And then you're like, and I'm a $175 soaking wet.
Exactly.
You know?
All of that fun stuff. So we always round up when it works out for us. But so, I was never the biggest or the fastest. So I had to find out how to be smarter than other players in my position. And so that's when I started to scout and analyze a lot of the players that I would go up against, or other teams, or even players on my teams, to see how they act in certain moments of the game. And so I started to do a lot of that because that was one of weaknesses of mine. I was never the fastest, never the strongest. I was becoming more technical, but the one thing that was my strength was my work ethic and my drive. And so I hated losing. I still hate losing. Shocker there.
Weird.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And so that was always my strength. My will to never lose and my will to win is something that I always used to drive me.
What position did you play growing up, and how did that change as you continue to develop?
Yeah, so I when I was younger, I was a forward, so I was all about scoring goals. As I got older, I wanted to be involved more in the game, and so I started to become a midfielder.
That center back.
Oh, no, I know. So I stayed in the middle of the field just because when my mom started to move to the U.S., in Colombia, there was not a lot of places to run and walk and all that. She started to get into marathon running. And so she would take me running. And so I got great cardio. And so teams started to utilize that they're like, listen, this kid can run. So
13.1 miles.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
question.
Don't
That's
stop.
just a half ski. We're going to go for the full.
Exactly. So yeah, I had great cardio. So then I just started to utilize that and played center mid where, I could go defend my goal, attack the other goal, and help my team out in different aspects. So I stayed as a center mid, and I loved it because I was always involved or a part of the play.
You talked about learning the players that you're going against. How is the film access over there, and how do you reutilize that in your coaching with your players now to understand that you could be lazy if you want, but you have more access to things at your fingertips that I would have wished I had just in the visuals?
Yeah, so it's crazy. Back then, you would have teams self-record the games, and then you would have back, and then you would have to ask for it. Nowadays, there's platforms where with a click of a button, you could see any professional game in the world, and you could see individual actions from every player across the world. So it was very time-consuming back then, but it was something that I felt like I needed to do to gain that competitive advantage. And so it requires a lot of time, but like I said, my will to want to succeed just it didn't really matter to me that it took a lot of time.
You, of course, get to Belgium. Where is this level of Germany and Belgium for those that know Europe?
Yeah,
soccer?
So it was the third division in Germany and then the second division in Belgium. And so starting to get very competitive and very real within grasp of the first division of the big leagues over there.
Next, after Belgium, where do you go?
After Belgium, I went back to Colombia, where I was born. I always had this fascination of working and living in the country that I was born, and so I got the opportunity to play for a first division team there in Colombia for 2.5 years.
What was that like for you, and how did the family really soak that up? Did you have any family close enough to come watch you How was that for you?
Yeah, it's very. It was. I would say it's a funny experience because I did have. So my mom has 6 sisters and a brother, and so a bunch of them still lived in the capital in Colombia. And so whenever we would play around the city, they would come to games and try to watch. And I remember a preseason game, my old grandma, she came and watched, and she's of course not understanding anything of it. Right as the game's over, she's just walking on the field, and everyone was like, "Whose old lady is that?" And I'm like, "Oh no, don't tell me that's her."
Grandma!
And Grandma, I was like, "What are you doing?" And, grandmas, they're so sweet and innocent. She had tucked like a $10 bill in her hand, and she's trying to give it to me. She's making a scene that I'm not taking it. So I had to take it in front of everyone. And I'm like, oh, man.
So you guys know Coach took a bribe. He took that big $10 bucket.
I took a $10 bribe from my grandma. If not, the scenes were just going to be outrageous.
But just having that experience, coming from what the family came from, that's got to be what they say, that Mecca opportunity. The opportunity of a lifetime that, one, you dreamt of, but you didn't see it for sight to come true. You get there, you're living in it, and you have family that get to see it. Because I'm sure when you played at Germany and Belgium, they watched you online at best. Did anybody, just that moment of having that with Grandma, and especially grandmas, of course, are old. Sometimes you don't get to see them live to be where they're at in that moment. Yeah, it gives you a little bit more motivation when they're there in person, and you want to make sure you perform, and it fills you with joy and more energy. So it's a wonderful experience, and that's why I always understand players that play maybe a little bit extra harder when they're playing in their hometowns, or they're representing their own city, or when they're playing around family. It gives them that little extra oomph. What was some things in Colombia, though, that you wish you didn't have to deal with? That, obviously we see the news, we see all that. But me, I'm a person where news is great, but real life is real life. And someone being able to say, there's things that I saw that I wish I didn't. Or was it something where because who you played for and what you were doing and always just locked in, you guys were almost away from that stuff? What was that like for you? It was a mix of everything. And it's funny enough how my time in Colombia ended, pushed me to come back to the U.S. But, I always say Colombia is a country that everyone should go visit. It is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. You have 5 or 6 different ecosystems within one country. Like I touched on, the people are so joyous. They could have $1 in their pocket, $2 in their savings account, and you'll see them smiling. Yes. And so that's what I love about the people of Colombia, that they're so hardworking. They want to earn their money. They want to earn their paychecks. And so that's something that I loved about the country, and it translates to the sport. At the same time, like you touched on, it is a country that is a third world country that has always been developing. And so, sometimes paychecks wouldn't come on time and all that fun stuff. And so, that's stuff that also guides you in becoming an adult quicker as a young adult. Making right decisions. You, of course, like you just said, you make your way back to the United States. Where's the next stop after Colombia? Yeah, so I ended up in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina, and I started to play in the league that Union Omaha now plays in the USL. And so I spent a couple years there, and it was a wonderful experience for me to then, play in the country where I grew up in. Now, for you, is this move to the U.S. to play, is this, 1, to get you back home, 2, because you're getting older and you know what you want? What's kind of the drive for that move? The drive was to try to get back to a top level. Things in Colombia and towards the end in Belgium, they didn't work out because of injuries. And so to me, it was, then can I get at the top again? And so to me, that was always a driving force. I think I was 24, 25 when I came back to South Carolina. And I was all about trying to get to the top again, trying to restart a process that I thought maybe halted for a couple years. How did you handle yourself during those injuries with feeling that aloneness? Who helped you stay sane or try to get you back to sane? Because I always share that on with a lot of these athletes that I get to talk to, is every athlete goes through those moments. Yep. It's what you do during them,
Exactly.
after them, or reflecting back on them, so then you can help someone, because that goes from where everybody wanted you, everybody needed you, to now you're injured, they're looking at the next player. And especially in soccer, there's a lot of people that are fiending for that next position.
Always. I think, you have to be very diligent with your recovery processes, and you have to rely on making sure you have the right people around you. For me, it was teammates, coaches, and doctors that were great and saw that I maybe needed a little bit more support than I was asking for, and they helped guide me through that. And especially nowadays, you should always ask for help if you feel like you need it. You should never be ashamed to do so. I think it's massive to really help individuals out, no matter be it sports or in real life.
Yeah, and those are things that you always remember, is who was there to make sure to help you get along. You, of course, get to South Carolina. What was that experience like for you, and how much closer did it get you to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, it was lovely. Honestly, the quality of life in South Carolina is something I didn't expect. Charleston's a beautiful city, and it helped me fall in love with the sport that I love again. Because, like I touched on with injuries, it sometimes puts it in a weird spot, and I didn't play a lot for a year and a half. And so when I got the opportunity to play, all of the juices started to flow again, and I said, this is why I love it. And I had some successful years there, and I felt again like I was kind of right there at the tip. And so it was so enjoyable to kind of be back and also be kind of a foundation for a league that was starting up again at the time.
Of course, you know that the MLS here in the United States, is that the goal to be? Is that the one-up of the USL? And I say this because for some it could be a yes and it could be a no. You are now coaching a team that has beat more than 5 MSL teams. How does that? I mean, that to me has got to breathe something into what the USL is.
For sure. It's as a player back then, I would say MLS is the goal. Now I gladly can say that I'm happy in the USL. And with news coming out, it's massive, and I tell people to read up about it now. But in Europe and South America, we have promotion and relegation. And, now the USL is going to start that in 2028.
Let's go.
And so
I was just seriously talking to Rich.
Exactly.
I was asking him, because I want to understand what I'm around. So then when I have conversations with people, it's knowledge is the power. Like, yes, I DJ for you guys, but understanding, is this opportunity to move up? And people are like, well, they don't do that in the United States. And I'm like, I understand we don't.
Yeah.
But when you see a team like Union Omaha beat 5 MLS teams, that's got to push the drive somewhere to be similar, but find your own regulations.
Exactly. And you know what? I think to me, the idea of promotion relegation is kind of, it's what America is really about, right? It's about that American dream. And so why play for a league or coach in a league that is closed off and you can only access it if you have a certain amount of money? Don't you want to be a part of a league where, it's about merit? And to me, that's kind of what the USL is trying to grow. Like, of course, there's going to be growing pains, and it's taken years to get there, and it's going to happen in 2028. But I think that's such an exciting time where, on paper right now, and maybe on the field as well, in 2028, you're going to be on the same level as the MLS. And so I think the USL has the right framework to be successful and try to compete with what the MLS has as established.
You, of course, how did you find your way to Omaha? How was that venture for you?
Yeah, it was awesome, and it was unique because the head coach at the time in 2024 coached me when I was a player, and he always pushed me towards coaching. And he saw there was an opportunity to be an assistant coach in 2024, and he said, look, like I can help you, in your first couple of years of coaching. And I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not. I didn't know if I saw coaching as my path or not. And then once I reflected and had that conversation with him, I was always someone that is driven by, player experiences, and I decided to become a coach because all I want is to make sure that players are happy and they feel like they're taken care of and they enjoy themselves. So I decided, I can make a change within as a coach, and that's kind of what pushed me.
Did you do any camps and stuff prior to making this decision that made you enjoy the coaching aspect? Because sometimes just going directly from player to coach is not a very successful move for some people.
Yeah, so it's funny, and I was talking with one of the assistants that I brought on this year, but I didn't do any camps or anything like that. What actually pushed me towards coaching was, in the last couple of years of my playing career, I actually had negative experiences with coaches, or I thought they maybe should have been doing things differently. So kind of a lot of those bad negative experiences actually pushed me more towards coaching.
And that goes for real jobs even today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens is you learn the craft.
Exactly.
You get as far as you can go in the craft, and you notice the ones who could be leading the craft doesn't mean that their drive and their goals are the same things that players need or want. Sometimes it could be egotistic. Sometimes it could be just a title. I've always, even when I was a coach, I feel as a coach, because I coached high school football here at Omaha South for 8 years, it was something I never took for granted. I made sure I showed up on time. I made sure I was the example, because if you don't as a coach, how can you ask a kid to do it?
Exactly.
And that goes even for my business that I've had a long company for 10 years. It's successful because of the drive that you put into the people that believe in you, and you show them how it can be. You get to this coaching position. What was your final thing that pushed you to say, this is what I want?
I think it's about, being able to create opportunities for players. I was in their shoes once, and I want to make sure that they succeed and enjoy the profession. I think this is a sport that, we talk about this community and the players that we have on our roster that come from different communities. It's a sport that can provide some great opportunities and can change your life. And so I just wanted to simply guide players and help them achieve their goals. That's kind of my driving force. I was an assistant coach, even as an interim coach towards the change last year. To when I got appointed, it's still my kind of motivation, is to make sure that players feel like they are important and they're happy with being a part of our time here in Omaha.
You come to Omaha, like you said, January of 2024. What do you remember about coming to Omaha, and what has changed from when you first came to now for you?
I didn't know what to expect when I got to Omaha. I think the state name scared me a little bit, hearing Nebraska.
Did you know where it was?
I did know where it was.
Okay.
I did know where it was.
All right.
Yeah, I did know where it was. I knew it was smack dab in the middle of the United States.
Easy.
So
that's what I always
easy.
say. I'm like, how could you forget? But
Exactly.
go ahead.
Exactly. So I think I just started to fall more in love with the community and the city. Every year that I'm here, every month that goes by, I think this is a place that has a community for everything, be it sports, good food, music, art. I love that. People are so open to being your friend and amicable, that I love that about kind of the Midwestern vibe and the personalities. I think it's wonderful. And I just love how people support their community, be it sport teams as well.
What did you learn from your head coach that let you know that Union was the place that you wanted to be? What was that like those first couple months trying to adapt to, one, be in a position or in a thing that you've never done before, but two, in an area that you have no idea what's about to happen?
Yeah, I was very aware that my growth has been very accelerated, where I was an assistant coach for a year and a half, and then I was asked to lead a group. And I had conversations with people to get some guidance, and one thing that I fell back on the most was, don't be afraid to make mistakes and don't be afraid to be yourself, because you were given this opportunity for a reason. So kind of showcase how you can lead a group, and if you're genuine, which every day that I'm born, that's kind of my principles, is honesty and being genuine. They told me to just be myself, and that's one thing that I kind of take with me, and I always implement in my lifestyle. It doesn't matter if I'm a head coach, an assistant coach, equipment manager, janitor, or just a student of the game player. I'm going to be the same person.
What'd you learn in that first year of coaching?
That the team comes first more than anything. You have to really make sure that every player feels love and confident, and that you have to put the hours in.
You guys won a championship that first year. What all do you remember about that championship?
Man, I just remember that the 10, 11 months of work feeling like it did pay off. The joy of celebrating a title with people that you work so hard in and spend so much time with, it's just such a joyous moment. It kind of, it like we talked about earlier, it shows you that hard work does pay off. And, they always say nice guys finish last. Well, to me, that's not true, because one of my mottos for Union Omaha is good people deserve good opportunities, and we've been winning. And so, good people deserve to win, and they will win.
Because before this, have you won any championship?
I didn't win any championships, really. No.
You get into 2025. You're still doing the same thing as assistant. How are you preparing yourself in 2025 different that you remember than 2024?
Yeah, I knowing what role I was going to be in, I took a lot of time to study the game and practice public speaking. The head coach at the time told me things I needed to get better at as a coach, and during that off season, that's what I did. And so I started to feel more comfortable with the role within myself and how I could help these players elevate themselves on the field.
You, of course, mid-season, like you said, July, the situation comes up of where they're asking you to be interim. How did this all come about for you, and was this something that you saw in the cards for? Was it on that bingo card of 2025?
Listen, it was so far off the bingo card, I didn't even know where to find it. So the opportunity came about because our head coach at the time got an opportunity to go to another team in the USL, another market, which was a great opportunity for him. And at the same time, our team was struggling. So I think it was a perfect time for him to get a wonderful opportunity that he deserved at a great club in Tampa Bay, and it gave the group another sense of energy. It happened to be myself, but I think anyone could have kind of helped them maybe rejuvenate the group a little bit more. So that's kind of how the opportunity came about. And at the time, it was on a week-to-week basis. They said, we'll see how it goes. And I said, I'm okay with it. Then it went to kind of month-to-month. And they said, how do you feel about the end of the year? And my conversations with the organization were always the same, that, to me, it doesn't matter how long it lasts. My focus is going to be on the players' well-being. And that's still my focus to this day, like I touched on.
What do you think changed for you guys from July until the end of the season? What was your guys' biggest growth? And what do you credit that to in the growth of even as a coaching staff?
I think, the players, they didn't say it in words, but, with their eyes and what they were showcasing, they just wanted more responsibility. And I showed trust in them that, we're going to play. We changed the way we played, and it was going to be a style that was a little bit more risk-taking involved and to be successful, but I trusted our guys a bit more. So I think they saw that trust that the staff put into themselves, and it gave them more belief and more confidence. And we started to do more things on the day-to-day that brought a little bit more joy out of them. And so we kind of just made the environment a little bit more enjoyable to be around. And I really pushed the envelope of joy and positivity, and I think that's what really helped bring the group together. And we started to use, instead of having to use 11, 12 soccer players on every week, our roster started to become whole, and 18, 19 players started to fire on all cylinders.
You, of course, get the season ended earlier than you want to. What was your message to those guys to understand where they have been and where they're accomplished to?
I was so proud of them. It was, we ended up losing in penalties, so we, technically we didn't even lose.
Correct.
But I was just so proud of them because they put their trust in a very young head coach, and they believed my messaging, and they believed in us, and they believed in each other, and they believed in the team. And so when I took over, we were in last place in the league, and we ended up in 5th place out of 14 teams. And so we got into the playoffs, and everyone was scared to play us. And so we earned respect from our peers, and that's what I was so proud of them.
That's overcoming that adversity that some can't
Absolutely.
do. Especially with the coaching change. Those are the hardest things. We'll get you out of here on this, of course, because I know we're getting to that hour, and man, it's been a great hour. I greatly appreciate it. And hopefully, if you're a Union Omaha fan checking this out, you see what Omaha has. If this doesn't breathe, speak of what, like he said, the pride that Nebraska people take in what Nebraska has, I don't know what you're listening to. Coach, of course, we'll get you out of here on this. The community coming together for your player who had the fire. And then, of course, your guys' new venue, going down to Morrison to play. I've, of course, got a DJ State Soccer. I'll be there again this year, and hopefully some more Union games. But how is that transition for you? And then, obviously, for those that don't know, obviously we didn't say it here. We talked about it prior, but I got to DJ 3 games, and the atmosphere it's not a lot of time during the game, but it's the pregame, the halftime coming out, and even those water breaks of making sure that the energy stayed focused. How important is the environment and all that put together after what the community did for your player as well?
It's massive, and Mishak, the player that was in that accident, he's someone that is a friend, and so it affected us all, and so we were so proud to see the community come together to support him and his wife through that accident, and still to this day, we're trying to do more to help him get back on his feet still, and it's been a year and a half, and so we're just very proud of the community to come together, and then touching on the environment and the change to Morrison, I think it's going to enhance the game day experience not only for the players but for the fans. Everything is right there now, and so that energy is just going to multiply. You're within touching distance of the action, and so, like you said, I hope you can come to every game, and the games that you're there.
That's up to you, Rich.
There we go, Rich.
Get that sold.
I think it's just going to enhance the experience for the fans. That energy is going to be multiplied. Being in downtown, you're just going to see that skyline, and you're going to see that hunger that our players have and that energy, and I think it's going to fuel our fans. And listen, we want to make sure that the community feels that Union Omaha is representing them in the right way, and we want to play our part in being successful and doing a good job of that. So we want people to come out. Just come out once. If you've never been, come out once. See that energy, see that vibe.
You'll grab on.
And we'll do our best to make sure it's entertaining on the field, and we know everyone else is going to do a great job of entertaining off the field.
Well, Coach, I greatly appreciate your time. I appreciate your story, and hopefully we just connected with one athlete, one player who might be going through some of the mental stuff that Coach talked about, but just the journey of scaredness where you could be alone. But what are you going to do during those times? Who are you going to reach out to? Who are you going to find? Union Omaha as well. Support local sports. They're winning championships, but they're putting Nebraska on a map in a positive way in the community, outside the community. Make sure to support them, but also just Coach himself. We greatly appreciate his time, and always remember, every time you listen to a Wired Axcess thing, we're always just trying to help one person, one athlete, one parent who might have this issue or thing that they can't overcome. You never know what you'll find in the Wired Axcess podcast. We'll see you next time.